Hello, career competitor. This is Steve Meller, as always, here to share with you some powerful conversation and some significant insights into what it means to optimize your career in pursuit of your optimal self. I am excited to be introducing our guest here shortly. But as always, let me draw your attention to careercompetitor.com, where you'll see right at the top of that homepage is a place where you can enter your email and become a part of my monthly subscription, my mid-monthly message, where I am just simply giving you that little nudge in the middle of the month to remember that whatever it was you set out to achieve with all that energy at the outset of the month and whatever those lofty goals may be at the end of the month, that you're not going to lose sight of that journey in between. Become a part of my community today. Head to careercompetitor.com, enter your email, and look forward to my next mid-monthly message. Now, let's get right into the show. Hello there and welcome in to this episode of Career Competitor, where I am excited to be joined by Dr. Marie-Hélène Pelletier, and she will be joining us here in just a moment to get the introduction she certainly deserves. And as a preparation for this episode, I want to let you know that we are talking all things resilience. So for anyone out there that is keen and eager to figure out how to overcome some of life's greatest adversities, this is an episode for you. Here's 3 things that we're going to be touching on, however. Firstly, how resilience is not just a tool that you use within your career, but it's an attribute for life. Secondly, we'll discuss the importance of having flexibility within the structure that is your routine. And finally, we'll learn why there is always context to consider when we're training our mindset. So these 3 things, so much more within this fantastic discussion with Dr. Marie-Hélène Pelletier on this episode of Career Competitor, and I hope you all enjoy. Okay, our career competitor today is a leadership expert who is spearheading the dialogue on the crucial issues of leadership, resilience, and work performance. As a practicing leadership psychologist and executive coach with over 20 years of experience, our guest is highly regarded in their field, having presented, authored, and co-authored a number of industry and academic publications that have won her numerous academic and industry awards. Most recently, our guest published their award-winning book, The Resilience Plan, a strategic approach to optimizing your work performance and mental health, where they educate readers on why resilience is the best defense against burnout and how everyone can build it in themselves. There is no denying that it takes resilience to compete at the highest levels in any career, which is why I'm so excited to have the chance to learn from and welcome in to career competitor Dr. Marie-Hélène Pelletier. Marie-Hélène, how are we today?
Oh, we're fabulous. Even more so now that we're talking, Steve. I'm so glad to be here.
Absolutely. And I'm going to be, you've given me the all clear to refer to you as MH the rest of the way, which I really appreciate. And I already feel like we're immediately friends because I've already got a nickname for you, which is wonderful. But
I know.
As we talked about offline, you know, the one thing I am so excited that we're finally getting around to this is that, you know, we have so much probably in common, but at the same time, there's this beautiful nuance in terms of the focus of what you work in today that I think is so important in any competitive world. And I think it really does span every single competitive world. Resilience is a necessity. So before we get more into the work you're doing right now, I would just simply love to learn the origin of this work. What was it, MH, that got you into this work, and why resilience spoke to you so much so early on?
Yes, combination. And the short answer is following my nose. But really, initially I was doing psychology, but I ended up working in northern Canada. And what that meant is I had the opportunity to work with very, very different populations, children, adolescents, adults, and employee and family assistance programs, and then realized at that time, now that's over 2 decades ago, how little intervention proactively could change so much. Loved that. Then realized that I wanted to bring more psychology to remote areas, went on and did a PhD 20 years ago in telehealth. So prior to the internet, allowing us to do what we do now,
Sure.
doing that distance psychotherapy, which required a lot of funding to do and a lot of managing of people, which then led to me loving management, studying further in this area, skipping a few steps. But what that led to is a career of various leadership roles, junior leadership role, like managing a call center, middle management, and then senior management, C-suite, the whole thing. And now in the past few years, I'm doing mostly keynote speaking and executive coaching and still have a practice as psychologist. And most of the people I work with are professionals and leaders, highly performing, highly fabulous people who at some point need something to give them an edge, both in their professional and personal life. And they get to see that they can't actually wing their self-care or just will it to be there, to be there for their resilience, to be there when they need it. And so that's how I realized in order to get to them, I need to show them how to be strategic about their resilience.
Yeah, immediately in my mind, I'm just hearing this, like, growing up, it was always, where there's a will, there's a way. Where there's a will, there's a way. And there's a blindness to that, right? It's just almost like, hey, I'm just going to completely put the blinders on and just run into this wall because apparently I have to go through this wall. And you're talking about this from such a completely 180 perspective in regard to that. You use the word system. Like, talk to us a little bit about the system that you're working with all of these competitive leaders.
Yes. And love the way you put it. And that to some degree, just to come back to this for a second, though, that to some degree, that blindness, or what I call sometimes, it's just a very optimistic perspective. Like, it will go fine. I can do this.
Sure.
And nothing matters. I'm doing this, And so that has many advantages, obviously. No entrepreneurs would ever start anything if they were not thinking that way. And many of our best achievements involved some degree of this, sometimes a lot. However, if we push this to the extreme, at some point, we're completely disregarding the reality, the context, and the system. Yeah. And so what I'm saying is, yes to all this. We keep the optimistic perspective. It's good for you. It's part of your personality. It's helpful. Yes, we keep it. And we're adding more of a realistic perspective on your context, on the overall system you're operating in, so that you can make choices that will sustain and grow that resilience, so you can do even more of the fantastic things you're doing.
It's such an important caveat to make, in the sense that we are in this space of high performers. In this conversation right now, we are very much alluding to the high performing part of it. Maybe that final chapter, maybe that area that you never could have imagined yourself getting to one day. And I appreciate you almost pushing back in a way to that notion of, like, okay, well, listen, call it blindness, call it optimism. At some point, that does serve you. At some point, that is helpful to you. But to your point, when the stakes get higher and higher and higher, chances are it's not just you. It's not just you anymore whose performance or whose success is at stake. So I have to assume a lot of this work that you're doing, people are not only having to consider resilience on behalf of themselves as individuals, but there's this team and organizational dynamic to it as well that they have to be considering, right?
Yes. And love your comment. It's almost as if it applies at two levels at the same time. So yes, it's not just you as an individual, it's people around you, your team and their resilience. And there are many things we can do there. And it's not even within ourselves. It's not just our determination, persistence, grit, all these things. It's also our physical health, our psychological health, our ability to go through this, but also the other things that are part of our life right now that we may minimize, disregard, think they're not important, think it doesn't matter, not even put it on the list, right? So there too, there is a bigger system to consider within us internally. And yes, there is also the system around us.
What I love about that is it's not, you're not referring to this as just a skill that's going to serve you in your said industry. You're talking about this as a real characteristic, a real attribute that serves you in life. Because why wouldn't you need resilience over here when all you're doing is being resilient over there? You know, the resilience is everywhere. It's not one-dimensional. It's not just in one lane. I mean, I'm a husband and a father. I have resilience every morning getting my children out of the door and to school. That is resilience every single morning. And we all experience that. But I'm curious now, just from that positive side of things, when you're working with these folks in this space of resilience, how do you help them see the positive? How do you help them see that the resilience that they're experiencing is in fact worth the work, because on the other side of the resilience is, fill in the blank for us. So I'm just curious about that.
Yes. I would say they usually see it, but I can still try to see if they didn't, how would we get there? They usually see it because they get to a point where the amount of demands that they're facing, and we'll all have times when somehow things look normal. It's
right.
Wonderful. We can actually, it's decent. But then there will be many phases where we're pushing the limit of the hours in the day, the minutes in the hour, all that. And when we're pushing that limit, we see ourselves miss timelines. We see ourselves sort of have a bit more things fall through the cracks. We see ourselves be a bit more impatient, not actually communicate the way that we really are in general, how we want to contribute and what we want to bring to people around us, both personal and professional. You're right. Emotions don't have lanes. It's all within us. So that's usually how they will see it. And when I work as an executive coach, people come to me for all kinds of situations. Sometimes it is about managing the next AGM, which they know will be highly volatile or whatever it is. And so they have the skills. I mean, the reason why they're in this role, they know what they're doing. Right. We're not wondering about that. What often is the challenge is if they had 2 weeks to just think about this one thing, that would be wonderful. They don't. So what we need is to optimize the thinking really quickly and optimize their their own resilience so that they can bring their best to this. Because in itself, the skills they have, that's not a skill type situation. That's how can I have enough of my brain to be there and manage this situation?
Yeah, the capacity to actually deal with resilience, like you're speaking to that here, is like, if we want to really address resilience, are we actually creating the space in ourselves to do that? Because it is an effort. It does require energy. And it's not something we can just brush aside and assume will just kind of take care of itself. As you said there, like a business owner, a leader, they're going to be in these positions where it's crunch time and they need to make space for this kind of work, right?
Yes, ideally front loading when prior you get to there. And the I think remarkable thing that I hear very often from people I work with using that framework is we've all done strategic plans that take forever, 4 days, teams, we are exhausted,
Sure.
The whole thing. We've also, most of us, have done a strategic plan that takes half an hour. You're sitting there, you're focused, you know what your goal is, you're extracting the key pillars, you're extracting your tactics, and you're going, and you know this is going to guide you exactly the way you need to. This is what I went for here, because everyone I work with have a life that is very full or overflowing, really. So it needed to be the sort of a straightforward approach there. And if you do that, and because it takes your particular context into account, number one, doing the plan is fairly straightforward. Number two, implementing it is aligned with your life. So most people do not have on a daily basis 2 or 3 hours to nourish their resilience. It's going to have to be fitted in what you have. Some things you may need to, maybe make different decisions about, but it can be done even if you change nothing else.
We're talking about training now. We're talking about finding some time to do a little bit of a resilience workout. It doesn't have to be, like you said, we can't find 2 hours, 3 hours, but how are we making that time, however much or however little sometimes that time needs to be? It's addressing the fact that it needs our attention, right?
Yes, It does. And literally, if you have a flight that's crossing the continent, get the book and you'll get out of your flight with your plan. Seriously, it is a very concise book that's also done that way. And it is a flexible cover, so it's easy. It travels well. But the point is, I'm saying this jokingly, but really the point is it is brief. And so you can actually get to the key exercises and get them done and then implement them. Literally implementing starting today, it's starting tomorrow. For example, I'll just give you an example.
Yeah.
A lot of people will realize that building our resilience in a strategic way connects very much with what we've all heard about in terms of emotional intelligence. It starts with self-awareness. Need to know how we're doing. And because if we don't know how we're doing, we're probably assuming we're fine, and therefore we're definitively not investing anything in making that even better because we're great. So, but we're humans. We will be impacted. It's much better to know it because then you can adjust it. It's, the ideal way. Otherwise, it's as if you're a business owner saying, I don't need to look at the financial statements unless they're a crisis. No one would ever say this, right? You're like combing through, looking for little early indicators so that you can early adjust. Same thing here. So a concrete example of increasing your self-awareness, you print a calendar from the internet somewhere, or you create one and you put it on a wall at a place that you visit every night. And every night you just put a number 0 to 10. How were you doing mostly today? That's it. That's your scale. It will be you rating it every day. So it'll be internally consistent. But then it will allow you to see, okay, 9.5, 8.5, 9, 8.5, 9, 7, 6.5, 6. So you're going to catch it before you're at the bottom of the tank here. And that is not taking a lot of time. I'm talking 5 seconds.
Right. That is so. You talk about discipline in this. My mind immediately always goes to discipline with this sort of thing because, again, so simple to say, but we suddenly go a couple of days and we forget to write the number down. And then usually that in itself, as much as you maybe notice the 6 and the 5s and the 6 and the 7, like we're allowing ourselves to excuse the exercise as well sometimes because we're not actually being assertive and establishing that discipline to something that can truly serve us in terms of what we're doing here. And I love the subjectiveness of this too. It's like, this is your scale. You're not, this isn't MH's scale. This is your scale. You get to decide, was today a 10 or was it a 6? Like that's up to you. And no one else can ever possibly explain that number to you aside from yourself. That is a level of ownership as well that I'm hearing in this exercise that can truly help someone see, okay, this is on my terms. I get to decide where my head is right now and when I need to start noticing that, hey, something's up. Something's off, and that good flow that I had going for a few days there, it's now starting to subside a little bit.
And you see how, and I'm sure everyone hearing you say this right now is, or many probably are thinking this, how what that does, and we hear it in how you say it, it grounds you. It gives you back that control that in times of extreme busyness, when you feel like things are not sliding in the right direction, you feel like you don't have much control. And sometimes looking for something to grab is really hard. So the more we can make these ways simple, doable, the better. And sometimes that will create that motivation to keep doing it because you are giving yourself the visibility. You are driving your own ship, so to speak. And so that sometimes will contribute. But then if it turns out it's not your tool, well, it may be something else.
Yeah. But that motivation part of it, we all want that on the back end. We all want to feel as though it's motivating us in the process. And I've had a similar process of my own. I cover a few different things, then I put numbers and I assign numbers to, and I've done it for a long time now. And for me, it is that it's as consistent or it's as part of my routine, let's say, as my desire to try to work out somewhere between 30 to 45 minutes every day. Like that is how I prioritize it, to the point where when I do travel and maybe get busy with this and this and this, and a couple of days go by and I see these couple of days missing, and it's like, wait, now I have to try to remind myself how I felt. Did I feel good? Was I not good? And then you suddenly go, wait, just ground yourself, just take a moment and just reestablish this work that you were doing. It's not the end of the world if you miss a couple of days, but to your point, it grounds you enough because you have that motivation from the benefit of that work previously.
Yes. And what you're saying there, also is very important because it's the same as when we create a strategic plan in a business about launching a new product or a new service. That strategic plan will have flexibility built in. We will reevaluate, see how it goes. We'll create sometimes different versions of this plan for different phases of the year or a different context. And so the example you're giving applies that way to many of us. We'll have a different context when we travel for work. We'll have different context vacation time. We may have a different context if life, for whatever reason, creates a phase where the schedule looks different. And having flexibility, and we know this from research on habits, that yes, you do want consistency and the same thing and all that. Yes. And you also want some level of flexibility with it. So that, today didn't happen. We're not worried about this. We're moving right back to the habit tomorrow or as soon as we can. It's staying on the radar. And sometimes one of the things I'll suggest is just find a much smaller version of it so you can keep it. So say for you, for example, if you're saying, you're planning for, let's say, 30, 45 minutes exercise every day, and a certain day is absolutely not possible. You're traveling and whatever. Well, I mean, you may be already doing this. I not known you for that long, but quite possibly. People do this. You walk in the airport longer. Just go back to the end of the airport, back to your gate. Yep. That's not the same, clearly. But it is not nothing. And it was for the express purpose of checking that box that you did do this today. It was just a different version given the context. Yep.
I definitely already do that, but I know there's lots of people. I know there's lots of people that are hearing this though, because I have clients that are exactly like this. It's just like I don't have time for 45 minutes today. What do you have time for? What do you have 5? Do you have 10? Do you have 15? Because if you do, it's all of that's higher than 0. And all I'm hearing, we're just a complicated being, aren't we? We humans. There's a lot going on. There's a whole bunch going on, and we're trying to manage all of this. And I would love, MH, here for you to just maybe provide that moment where you've seen all of this stuff that you're talking about. How did it serve you? And when did it serve you when you most needed it within your life? Because I have to assume that someone who has practiced this the way in which you have, and all these different folks that have benefited from it, when was it the resource for yourself that you needed it to be?
Constantly, I would say. Anytime the context changes, so I'll give you maybe 2 examples.
Please.
But one was when I was planning to write the book. So writing a book, everyone, takes time. A lot of time. Steve is nodding. Yes, right? It takes an immense amount of time. And so sometimes people say, how did you fit it in? I did not fit it in. I moved other things. I pushed other things. I changed priorities for a decently long period of time, made less money also because I was focused on this particular goal. And so I created a plan for that phase with lots of information in advance, a lot of planning so that would happen, so that I would actually enjoy that phase, not just make it happen, suffer through it, hope it finishes soon, not that. And then I did it again, planning for just right now, I'm just after the pre-book launch, book launch, post-book launch. It's a phase, it's a thing. Sure. And so the context post-book launch 3 months later is very different. And so context changes, you adjust. So it does not take long, but it changes everything. Otherwise, you're trying to keep doing what you were doing and the context has changed. It doesn't work. It's like, when you keep doing with your 3-year-old what worked when they were 2 years old. You were great. You had found a balance. Right. It was all working. And then they grow and you keep doing the same thing. It doesn't work. Right. You keep doing it. It doesn't work. And at some point you say, okay, something's not working. Yep. And then you realize, you need to change.
I'm living it right now. MH. I got a 4-year-old daughter going on 14 and a 3-year-old son that doesn't believe in gravity. So there's two very adverse things going on, requiring a ton of resilience on behalf of my wife and I. But I love that example. I'm glad that you brought it back to the book because, firstly, because I can obviously it resonates with me. I've been there, I've done it, but at the same time, to your point, it wasn't about fitting it in. It was never about fitting it in. It was always about what has to move to make space. And that has kind of been a running theme here in this conversation. It's, again, if you're hearing this and you're just like, do I practice resilience? Do I practice this? Do I practice that? Well, if you're questioning it, most of the time that usually means that maybe you're not making a lot of space for it. If you find yourself doing that right now as you listen to us, I encourage you to say, okay, where can I make space for this? What can I move, to make space for this? And in that moving, knowing that it's an intentional act that you are taking ownership for, and you will therefore be motivated to follow through with it. Because making it subjective from the very beginning in so many ways, making it personal from the very beginning in so many ways.
Agreed. And sometimes, in order to make space, you need a bit of planning ahead, given how full everyone's life is. So seeing that there will be a summer in the next few months for many people in the North Hemisphere. Hemisphere, I don't want to pronounce that word. It's the same in French, so that's my problem. Yeah. Steve, how do you say it?
Hemisphere.
Thank you. So we'll just use the way Steve said it. Okay, so seriously. So a lot of people will have some vacation time in July and August. So what you can do is start planning now. How are you going to increase your resilience during your vacation? What's the one thing you've done in the past that for you is really bringing your energy back? How can you protect that time now? Do you want to use that time to read more books, Steve's book, my book, other books, to inspire how you're going to then look at the rest of this year and the next year? So you can start planning now, having your resources lined up so that when you get there with a bit more time, you'll be ready to invest.
And mine's a plane ride too. We've both got plane ride books, very adaptable to bags and all that kind of thing. But I do want to dive into your book now a little bit, because firstly, I can't wait to eventually get a copy of it myself and give it a read. It sounds like it's right up my alley, and I know it's going to be up a lot of other people's alleys as well. But for me, it's this notion of the defense against the burnout, and you make that a big part of the summary of the book. If you were to go look at it online right now, burnout is this consistent theme that remains in corporate America, in life, wherever you want to put it, wherever, fill in the gap. For me, I guess my greatest curiosity about this book is how on earth we've talked a lot about self-awareness, but how on earth does maybe someone stop and say, okay, from a burnout standpoint, how do I know that I'm experiencing burnout, and why, therefore, is this book for me?
Yes, big questions. Okay, so let's start from just stepping back for a quick moment. So burnout, because we use it also in everyday life, mostly meaning we're exhausted. The actual definition from World Health Organization involves three things. We're exhausted. We're also cynical. Nothing's going to change. I've lost hope. And it has an impact on our performance. So it's an occupational phenomenon. It's not a diagnosis. And it involves these three. Now, if we're only exhausted, it's still important to pay attention. You may not meet the full criteria for burnout, but it's still very important. So we have to think that. The second thing that's important is that burnout is not within an individual. It's in the relationship between the individual and their workplace, which means there is an opportunity to influence this from, yes, an individual perspective, and also from an employer's perspective. We would not want to imply that it only resides with the individual. It's not, because we're in a context, an employer has part of this relationship. Okay. Now, in the book, my focus is a bit more on us as individuals in this context. Because even if it's an assistant, even if, say, we could establish that 100% of the way you're feeling, let's say you're fully burnt out, is entirely because of the employer's situation. Even then, we can't just sit and say, well, because it's their fault, I'm going to wait for them to fix it. Because we, in the meantime, are crashing. We're burning out here. So that's what I'm saying in the book. It's a bigger system and everything else, and there are things we can do as individuals. So going back to it, therefore, what do we do? How do we do this? It does start with realizing that we are impacted by the demands that we're facing. Right? So that we're not just thinking that we're either a rock or a wreck. That's what tends to happen. I've got a chapter called just that. Because high performers tend to think that they are the rock. They think that, we think that. I thought this, and you're told this. Family members tell you, oh, honey, you're the rock of the family. You're the rock of the team. You're the rock of the work, whatever. And that's nice. It's meant very positively and all. However, it suggests that therefore we're not impacted. We can do anything, anytime. It never matters. And then that's when we stay here until we're like, over here, I'm a wreck. Hence that exercise of checking in with yourself on a regular basis, which allows you to realize smaller impacts and acting sooner. But part of what having a strategic plan for your resilience will do is, number one, connect you with your values, listing all your values, what's most important for you in life. I've got an exercise where I'm asking people on the sheet to have 2 columns, all the demands you're facing, all the sources of supply you have. So, and here, careful about this positive bias, I'm calling it there, that it's not just the top 3 things you don't like about work. It's also the positive things in your work right now, but they're demanding. Like launching a book would have been one, for example. Super exciting, love it, wanted it, like yay, and it's going great. And it represents a demand. And then listing all the demands on the personal side, not just, oh, well, of course I'll take care of my daughter. She's my daughter. I love her and all that. Yes, and these days, it's especially demanding. So yes, it goes on the list. So we're becoming more realistic. Because without that realistic perspective, no, we're not going to carve out the little time to take action. I also walk people through doing a SWOT analysis for themselves, looking at their own areas of strengths, challenges internally, but also externally in their context, so that you can get to a strategic plan.
I am so thankful that you provided that definition around burnout. I think that is such an important piece in this, mainly because of the cynical piece immediately addresses that this is, and again, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, and I welcome it, but it sounds like it's as much of a mindset as it is a situation too. I mean, obviously we're experiencing it on a physical level, but the cynicism tells me right away that there's this mindset that we've now taken because of the situation, because of the circumstances that we're in. But in my mind, whenever I hear that something is being captured through a mindset, I hear there must be a solution. There must be a solution. If there's something going on in the mind, there must be a solution. That it's not a you problem. It's not this thing that's wrong with you. It's a mindset that has become, because of, to your point, the context that you now find yourself in. So again, you're the doctor. You correct me if I'm wrong here. Or am I capturing that right?
You are. It involves both aspects. There are situations like that are exclusively mindset. Say, for example, someone who's anxious about speaking in front of a group of people. That anxiety is in their mind, and if we deal with it, then it's gone, and that's it. It was their thinking that was making it worse. They're all looking at me. They all think that I'm looking stupid. They don't like what I'm saying. It doesn't resonate with anyone. Whatever. That is exclusive mindset. Whereas in burnout, we've got in part mindset, and we've got in part the situation. For example, just so we see what I mean by this, and we know this from research, the kinds of things that our workplace sometimes unfortunately won't pay as much attention to, the amount of workload we're dealing with. And again, we're not talking about changing 80% of it. Sometimes a 10% change means a big difference. Sense of community, involvement of people in their opportunity to influence decisions. If these things are there, and these are 3 examples, there are others. If these things are there, I likely will maintain a bit more of a sense of engagement, feeling like I can influence things, and it's all good. If these things are not present, or perhaps they are somehow present, but they're not communicated, so they look like they're not, then that can lead in part to me developing this mindset of, well, there's no hope. Nothing's ever been changed, and that's no good. So, and then, yes, we can do things with this mindset, also recognizing it's a system, and some of it belongs to, in this case, the employer side.
Yeah, it's a combination. Gosh, please hear that. If you're hearing this right now, like, please, my gosh, hear that it's a situation that there are 2 parties involved. That yes, you can feel and you can be exhausted and you can be cynical, but there is another party here, and there is a way for you to have at least that sense of, I guess, comfort in many ways, just that comfort of knowing like, hey, listen, this isn't just, it's not a me thing. It's not all me. There is this ability for me to consider the other side of this situation that I find myself in. And I'm curious as well, this is probably the last question around the book now, but how do you take folks through that process within the book of saying, okay, once we have this true understanding of the situation we maybe find ourselves and how much we can maybe own and how much might be on another party, how do you then start to help folks get into this headspace where they can use resilience, as you say, as this tool, as this resource in what they do?
Yes. So what happens is, number one, the overall process allows you to have even more clarity on the situation, in part recognizing what's yours, what's the system or the context around you. It also moves you towards incorporating actions that will increase your resilience. And once you do that, everything gets better. It's easier to think. You're more aligned with how you want to be, and you can make decisions. So it may involve, for example, staying in this team or in this workplace right now and having more conversations with my leader and establishing even better boundaries and looking for the next opportunities I want to work on either here or somewhere else. It could also involve looking for something else at this point. So, but we can do all this when we've got enough of the energy and the brain space to do it. And so that's, if you're closer to burnout, this is where it helps. If you're sooner in the process, then you're maintaining it from, a healthier, stronger place sooner, avoiding pain. Yeah, we can help you out of it. Of course, it's part of what you do, part of what I do. But so much better if we can, stay in this other side of the range over here, which the proactive nature of doing a strategic plan helps with.
Gosh. MH, honestly, there's so much good here. Like, from time to time, I fill up my notepad, and this is one of those days where I've just been writing a whole bunch and trying to capture as much as I can, because there's so much information and insight and potential impact here that can be of resource to folks. And one question I have to ask you, because I've not really gotten onto this within the conversation, because I do like to ask this with someone like yourself, because all you've done is provide so much generous insight here. But bringing the spotlight onto you here as we finish, how does MH at the end of the day consider the day something that she can check off and say, okay, today was a win. I put today in the win column, because we're all about competing on this podcast. And as long as you've been listening to this is positioning you to compete at higher levels, period. But I'm curious now, just specific to you, what is it that allows you to see a day as a successful day at this point of your life?
It often is, well, if something fabulous just happens, yes, like talking to you today. Yeah. No, seriously, right? But no, I actually mean it. The part of what I value are conversations like this. That's in part it's for me a gift I did not see coming from writing a book, and turns out it's actually very nourishing for me. So that's part of it. But a couple of things. Number one, if I took the time, now you'll smile perhaps because it sounds like my book, but it's true. If I took the time at the beginning of my day to actually identify what are the things that have to happen today, and not a long list. That's usually, I try to stick to actually one or two. There will be many more things that will happen, but I like to identify the top one or two. And therefore, if I finish the day and I did do the one or two, that usually feels like a win. And I try to focus the wins on things I have control over, like this. So there will be other wins that I'm not fully controlling. Will I get booked for 3 more keynotes by the end of today? Quite possibly. But this, I cannot predict for sure that they will happen today or all today or whatever. But if they do happen, that's definitely a win.
Definitely. I love it. And, I think there's so much about what you represent. I mentioned it briefly earlier, but I want to just emphasize it again here. Easy to say, difficult to do. There's so much of what you're providing here that there's a simplicity around, and I'm such an advocate for it. Anyway, in my work today, I can find simplicity and take away chaos and confusion. Let's do it. And so much of what you're providing here, MH, is all around how do we make things just that little easier and simpler on ourselves, but the discipline required to incorporate it daily and the effort to actually maybe move a couple things out of our way in order to incorporate this stuff. That's the challenge. That's the difficult piece of this. But you can hear it just through all of these accounts that you provided. The benefits are just truly endless, no matter where you are on your career journey. So with all that being said, MH, thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time. I'm just purely delighted that I could be part of your day and you could join us on the show. And regards to the book, regards to the speaking engagements, all this stuff, best of luck with anything and everything going on in your world moving forwards. And I'm just so thankful for having you on the show.
Oh, thank you, Steve. It was an absolute pleasure, and all the best to you as well and your audience.
My thanks again to MH for joining us on this episode of Career Competitor. And as you leave here, I want you to just consider, because I love it when our guests provide exercises, real life application that you can immediately start to utilize within your world. And MH referred to self-awareness and then the subjective scale, areas that we can immediately very much hit the ground running off the back of this episode. So from a self-awareness standpoint, what are you doing to create these indicators within your life to know when you are maybe off track or out of alignment with what is best for you? Secondly, from a subjective scale, are you able to catch those moments, catch yourself when you maybe are stepping out of alignment? This is just areas that you can really utilize immediately off the back of this episode, where you can ensure that no matter what life throws at you, are you in a position to where you can remain aligned and continue on your journey despite any resilience that may be coming your way. So my thanks to MH for joining us on this episode and providing this powerful insight. And for you, the listener, continue to come back for more. The guests continue to just add more and more quality each and every episode at the moment. And I am just here for all of it, and I hope you are too. Before you leave, make sure you subscribe. Go ahead and share this episode with anybody that you think can benefit from it. And of course, leave us a rating, preferably 5 stars on Apple Podcasts. It goes so far to ensuring that we as a show continue to grow and continue to have this incredible impact upon many the world over. Thanks again for listening. I appreciate your time. Best of luck with anything and everything you've got going on in your world. And I look forward to doing this all again with you very soon. Bye for now.